Yeah, there were not really isolated instances, but they started to feel uneasy. I remember my father talking about some of our neighbors, um, sort of dealing with different types of glances on a day-to-day in a very diverse neighborhood outside of Los Angeles. Um, and my brother having some isolated incidences of feeling like he was, he would have conversations with people on an airplane or something. And then, he would mention he's from Iran. And then people would immediately say, oh, how do you feel about this, all the terrorists? My brother having to say, well, none of the terrorists were Iranian. I myself had a harrowing experience because I only became a U.S. citizen 3 months after 9/11. 2 months after 9/11, actually. My father had never become a U.S. citizen. He's still not a U.S. citizen, and he never felt the need to be. And he, I think he's always had the feeling that he would return to Iran permanently. My mother, applied for U.S. citizenship and took me along with her to do that. And I thought, okay, great, I can travel with much more ease through Europe and not have to pay all those visa charges and all that. So it just so happened that my court date to go and be sworn in and everything happened in November of 2001. So I just became an American then. Around December, I took an Amtrak cross country. I became very phobic of flying, particularly after 9/11. And I started taking Amtraks back and forth from coast to coast. And there was one incident outside of Buffalo, New York, I believe. It was like midnight. And, we'd already been on this train for hours. I had finally sort of fallen asleep. And the train had stopped. And suddenly there were flashlights in all of our eyes. And I sort of looked at my boyfriend. I said, what's going on? And he said, and there were these men who were dressed, like police, but I don't know if they were sort of border police or what really was going on. And they were going around with flashlights asking people what the country of their citizenship was. And I immediately said, Iran. But the guy, and I'd just become an American citizen, but I've always said I was born in Iran. I've always said I was an Iranian citizen. I forgot for a second. And the guy just said, excuse me? And I said, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm a U.S. citizen. And he paused, and he had a moment of just looking at me very silently. And, here I was in a hoodie and a T-shirt and sweats, and he said, you're Iranian? And I said, no, I just became a U.S. citizen. I just realized somehow they were dealing with so much chaos on that train because this was unusual for everyone aboard. He didn't take more time with me. But I felt that was my first instance of feeling a sense of horror at what it meant to be Middle Eastern today. And then really the only other instance I've had a very awkward sort of feeling was this past summer, right before my book tour. I was living in Park Slope, which I think most of us think of as a bastion of liberalness in Brooklyn, and I was at the flea market there, and one of the guys was selling all these knickknacks and sort of these pins, mostly concert pins, and there was a pin there that said "Fuck Iran," and at first I looked at it and I thought, what is that? It's just, sort of Arial font, fuck Iran. I wasn't thinking sort of historically. And I went up to him and I said, what is this pin about? And may I have it? I'll buy it so someone else doesn't. And he said, oh, these were those pins that they used to sell in supermarkets in the U.S. around the time of the hostage crisis. These were all over the place. And he kind of said, oh, but I didn't get it. My colleague over there found it in some place. And I said, well, yeah, because I'm Iranian. I have to have this. And he ended up not charging me for it and apologizing a few times. But I just remember shaking for hours as I walked home with this Fuck Iran pin that's still sort of on my mantle. And, I'd known about the Fuck Iran slogans and that the incendiary nature of that time period. But until I had that pin in my hands as an artifact of that horrible time, it was never very real to me. And it's been something I've held on to, and it's been an important reminder for me.